Hello and welcome. My name is Dr. Daniel Martinez. I am a psychiatrist. I've been in the Chicago area. I've been working for over 25 years, and this is the start of a new beginning. Today, I'm going to have a podcast, and from here on, I'm going to give you my stories of what works and what doesn't work for having a happy life. I've been doing this for a long time, and mentors of mine have told me in the last couple of months that I needed to move towards doing something different since I've done a lot of work for many years. And so podcasting is what came to light. And I thought to myself, how could I possibly be a podcaster? I have such an ugly voice. I'm not eloquent. I don't have many attributes. But like everything else in life, we can give ourselves excuses to talk ourselves out of anything. And so that's why I'm here today. And I want to give you my stories. And I need to let you know a story that I have for you. So I graduated 30 years ago. I spent 5 years becoming a psychiatrist, and I've been doing this for 25 years. I have been doing this for a very long time, and I've loved every minute. In fact, it's interesting that sometimes I'll wake up at 3 and 4 a.m., and it's amazing how I have difficulty going back to sleep because I'm ready to start the day. It's been 25 years. It hasn't been easy, but it's been wonderful. Michael E. Gerber was the one who told me many months ago that I started to do a podcast. And I said, that's a crazy thought. I went back to my team. Shout out to all the CCS team. I've had a company for 26 years and it's been wonderful. And they said, here we go again, another project. How could we possibly create another project? Shouldn't I be ready to start calling it quits, maybe even to retire? And I've loved projects because it brings out something new in me. It's not easy, it's difficult, but it's the right thing. We're all called to greatness, and not just me. Born to immigrant parents, my parents never even probably passed third grade. I grew up in a town and in a community where I didn't even know individuals who had gone to college. Everybody in my community was a blue collar worker. And so I thought that I was going to be destined to work in factories. I did that for many years when I was a young man, thinking and trying to figure out my way through life. But with great mentorship, I decided to make some changes in my life. And so I did. So mentorship is the key. I'm going to be coming back to this over and over again. Mentors in life are the ones that are going to help us move forward. How did I find mentors? I'll let you know how all that happened for me. For me, the greatest mentor was a guy by the name of Bruce. And can you imagine? I was a senior in high school thinking about how I was going to move forward with life. And he said, you should go to college. I said, but I didn't even do good in my ACTs or SATs. He says, well, we can work with that. I can tell, I can see it in your eyes that you can do good things. And so then instead of pursuing a career in the technical fields, I'm not knocking down any technical fields. My dad was a blue collar worker working in a factory for 35 years, and he still has a great life. He's 92 years old. We just celebrated his birthday probably 2 or 3 weeks ago. And he's married for over 57 years to a beautiful lady. They've got retired, happy, healthy at 92, plenty of friends, a rock solid faith life, content, very happy every day. It's been amazing because they have lived with solid values. And my feeling is that they really are the admiration of many, many people in our community because of how they have lived a wonderful and in many ways uncomplicated life. That's another thought. So, first is mentorship. Second thing is not to complicate our lives. When we don't complicate our lives, we're going to do better in life because we're going to have energy to focus on what our true goals are. That's the third thing. The third thing is how can I help individuals? How can I help myself get to 10 years from now and live a life that we are destined or hoping to live? The goal is not to let anything get in our way between our goals and our life. Can you believe a mentor said you needed to go to college? And like a lot of things in life, I've always been a great student. I've worked hard when I find a good leader, and I've just continued to move forward. So I I went to college and I continued pursuing careers. Initially, I was going to become an engineer, and then I switched over to biology. Then I switched over to psychology, and life was complicated. But then I ended up in medical school. How I got there, that's a conversation for another story. But I ended up becoming a psychiatrist. I became a medical doctor in 1995. I got married in 1996. In 1997, newly married, new physician, I ended up getting deathly ill. It was probably the scariest time in my life. A time when I woke up one day and I was having all kinds of troubles. By the end of that day, I was in serious medical issues. I ended up in the hospital for a whole week where I couldn't even move my legs. That was a very tough time. The preliminary diagnosis was multiple sclerosis. And I had no idea where my future was going in those days. By the time I ended up leaving the hospital, it was found that it wasn't multiple sclerosis, but I got a broader diagnosis called transverse myelitis, an inflammation of the spinal cord. In fact, I even got another diagnosis, encephalomyelitis, inflammation of the brain. I didn't lose my mind, but I was just very scared. It took me about 5 months to get back to work. I was limping in wheelchairs, just having a really, really tough time in those days. All the time I was thinking, what am I going to do? And what does my future hold? Because it didn't look good. Thank God, about 10 years after I got diagnosed with that condition, a friend of mine, neurologist, shout out to Dr. Tudor Yuko, and he said, let's do some lab tests. There's been new advancements in the field of neurology. And after he did the tests, I was found to be positive for NMOIGG. And so the new possible diagnosis was coming afloat. Dr. Jakob said the only individuals who can tell you something is, I think her name was Dr. Lucanetti at Rochester, Minnesota, the Mayo Clinic. I was newly married, just a year married. My wife had just taken on a new job, and she couldn't go there with me because she felt so much pressure at her new job. So I took my mom and my dad, and we drove to Minnesota. It was amazing when I walked in to meet the doctor who supposedly was the specialist in this new identified condition. She said to me some words that I will never forget. She says, Dr. Martinez, I want you to know that everybody who's walked into this clinic with your condition have either been blind or in a wheelchair or both. And I was walking decently and I wasn't blind. So if you see me smile from here on for the rest of my life, know that I'm a very fortunate man. I feel very blessed. So I've had to deal with that condition. If I was to tell you more, I could make anybody cry with all the things that I've had to suffer throughout these now close to 30 years of my condition. But the important thing is to take on the virtue of fortitude. So, fortitude is to hang in there and not give up no matter what. In fact, since I've been a psychiatrist, that's been my specialty, is helping individuals how to not give up in the face of tragedy or much suffering and pain, tribulation. I'll continue perhaps more. I can share more on that at another time. So I became a psychiatrist and I've been moving on as a psychiatrist. What does a psychiatrist do? So a psychiatrist is a physician, a medical doctor. In fact, my license is physician and surgeon. And my job is to primarily prescribe medication for individuals who have either emotional suffering or behavioral problems or both. But the idea is that it goes way beyond prescribing medications. In fact, a philosophy in our clinic is to prescribe the least amount of medicine. And if we can get away with no medicine, that is the hope. At the end of the day, I've always told individuals that suffering is primarily an attitudinal issue, attitudinal problem where we continue to think of certain problems in a certain way, and the result bring suffering to ourselves. As I was becoming a psychiatrist, I recall being interviewed for positions in residency trainings for psychiatry, and someone asked me, why did I want to become a psychiatrist? I recall that the only person that came to my mind was my maternal grandmother. Her first name was Aurora. And Aurora, what a beautiful name, huh? The translation is the dawn, dawn of a new world, dawn of a new life. So Aurora was my grandma. I have only heard stories, but I never saw her walk well. I only saw him probably limping around in her 40s. She was wheelchair bound in her 50s. She was bedbound in her 60s, and she passed away sometime in her 70s. She was so crippled that we used to almost think of it as a joke. We used to take, as kids, come around her bed and take her fingers, and she would just enjoy us having fun manipulating her hands. And yet she was the life of the party. She knew everything about everyone and the world, always watching television, always keeping up with everything on the news, talking on the phone day and night. It was absolutely a beautiful time. I thought she was the center of life. We would always get around her bed every Sunday afternoon, always willing to look at life with the glass half full. I consider myself as being very blessed for have lived in the presence of such a wonderful person who had such perseverance and tenacity through life. At the same time, I come from a large extended family, and along with that, I saw many individuals who were supposedly, seemingly very physically healthy, and yet they constantly made poor choices. In fact, they made horrible choices. And as a result, they were always suffering and negatively impacting and causing suffering for all those around them, all of the people that they loved. I can imagine that both seeing those individuals plus seeing my grandma is how I ended up choosing to go into psychiatry as a field because life is really about quality. I tell individuals if you only have 5 years to live, uh, let's make these the best 5 years of your life. Unlike doing other specialties in medicine where the main focus is life expectancy. Um, of what use is it to live an extra 20 or 25 years if we're going to make horrible choices and bring about suffering to ourselves and to the ones that love us? So, quality over quantity is the name of the game. And so I continue to move forward in terms of psychiatry. I tell individuals who has problems in life, everybody has problems. So how do we go about tackling these problems is the next aspect of my story for you. Since I trained in child psychiatry, I learned about Anna Freud. And Anna Freud was the daughter of Sigmund Freud, and she was a child psychoanalyst before Anna Freud was Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud is considered the father of modern day psychiatry. And Sigmund Freud is known for this saying love and work are the cornerstones of humanness. Love and work are the cornerstones of humanness. Anna Freud, who was a child analyst, looked at play as a form of work. And so now in my practice, I talk about the idea of the importance of work, love, and play. We all need to work. We all need to feel significant. In fact, Alfred Adler, another, I think he was an ophthalmologist who then got involved in the field of psychology and psychiatry. Alfred Adler would say that our self esteem is directly tied to our sense of social significance, meaning that what we do for others in terms of what we do for service and work is going to reflect on how good we feel about ourselves. So it's important to participate in life through gainful employment that brings about good for society. Work. Love. Love is an elemental part of life. Love is what brings life to this earth. And by that, I mean we need to live with passion and conviction towards certain goals, whether that's intimacy with a partner, whether that is a pet, whether that is a job, a mission. We all need purpose in life, and love usually encapsulates that for all of us. We find that in this day and age, post pandemic, there's so much loneliness and isolation, and that is diminishing the longevity in this world. I recall a research that really impacted me, which suggested that veterans who have no partner and live alone have a 13-year life expectancy less than those individuals who have a partner at home. So, very important. We need love in our life. And then leisure and play is extremely important because that's how we recharge our batteries. We have to find meaning in life by enjoying life, and we need to give ourselves over to others. I love life. I do a million things. Up until I turned 50, all I did was work. But now, since I've been 50, I've been involved in all kinds of activities because it is so important to give ourselves over to music and sports, cinema, theater, art of all kinds. And these are things that I hope to share with you in my future podcasts episodes and encourage you to find out what makes you tick, what you love, and how you can get involved so that you can find life. Medicine is the last resort when we treat with psychiatric problems. How does a psychiatrist deal with individuals who have issues? The way in which I propose is actually that's been a passion of mine for my entire 25-year history. I'm always amazed, baffled at the medical model. So the medical model was posited in 1976 by a psychiatrist by the name of George Engel in the Journal of the American Medical Association. And he said that in order to be an effective physician, one needed to focus on the biology, but just as much as on the psychology, meaning the attitude, how I think and feel about myself, how I think and feel about the world around me, and sociology. How do I engage with the world? What kinds of activities do I get involved in? The work that I have, my finances, my relationships, all these things are crucially important. And then, as being a psychiatrist of 25 years, I now parse out culture and spirituality. By culture, the varying values and belief systems of individuals pertaining to the different parts of the world that we come from. It is very different to be Mexican American versus Caucasian white versus black versus Asian. We're all very different. It's very different to be high SES or lower socioeconomic status. We look at life from different vantage points, and focusing on culture is incredibly important. And the fifth and final piece is the spirituality. What is the purpose in life? Meaning in life. Because without meaningfulness, we can easily get ourselves in trouble. In fact, I think it's one of the main ills in this country of why we have so many problems in life is that people don't have purpose. And so that is a key focus of my interest as we continue to talk about psychiatry in these future episodes. So there you go. That's how I look at the issue of psychiatry. I think what I want to do as I get ready to close for today is talk about where I am with all this stuff. I told you I've been a medical doctor for 30 years. I've been a psychiatrist for 25 years. I've seen the good and the bad. And I've always walked around with a sense of why is it that this country suffers so much from an emotional perspective? How could it be that we live in probably the most affluent country in the world, if not certainly one of the top, and yet there's so much misery in this world? How could it be that approximately 1 in 5 individuals have psychiatric problems in this country? How could it be that of those who are suffering, only 1 in 5 are actually getting some help? The rest are not living at their fullest potential. They're living somewhere over here. And that is a tragedy that we are not living uh, our calling to our fullest potential, not fulfilling our goals and our dreams, not really living with the purpose and the mission that we all wished we did. So I've always walked around and I've been thinking, where is all this coming from? And then I came to a conclusion that as I've reviewed the last 25 years, I'm thinking the idea is that perhaps all of this started 70 years ago. I've always walked around my entire career hearing the money did not follow the person. What does that mean? The money did not follow the person. Ah, this is what I feel it means. Between 1850 and 1950, there were approximately 500,000 psychiatric hospital beds here in America. Today, there are barely 40,000, not even 10%, maybe closer to 7%. Between 1850 and 1950, there were 500,000 psychiatric hospital beds. And then the thought was, in government primarily, that maybe individuals needed to get out of the hospitals, get back home to their families, to their friends, to work, to a healthy life, and life would be normal. The truth is, perhaps that maybe just the opposite has happened. In 1963, John F. Kennedy signed the Community Mental Health Services Act, facilities out in the community where the previously psychiatrically hospitalized individuals leave and go into the community, be cared for by outpatient services so that individuals could live at home and continue on with their lives. But remember the term that I said? The money did not follow the person. It is believed that less than 50% of the funds that were supposedly allocated in the past to mental health services actually made it out into the community. And so it could be that the amount of individuals suffering from mental health conditions are rampant now in our community. And it very well could be the reason for why is there so much homelessness? Why is criminal issues going up? How come there's so much drug use? Let's talk about drug use. I mean, I don't want to keep going into tangents, but it was inconceivable for a psychiatrist 25 years ago to treat a person who we knowingly knew that they were using marijuana or using other drugs. Nowadays, it's legal. And so many people, probably 3/4 of the individuals that I see, particularly the teenagers that I see, are using substances. And now I need to prescribe medication or work with other means to try to help them, which may only just complicate the issue. Those topics for another time. But life is very, very complicated. It's now legal. And so I can't say much about that, except that sometimes I tell individuals, as much as I like you, I can't help you because all your drug use and your alcohol use is just complicating the situation. And it very well could be because we do know that substances impact the brain in negative ways. So that's how we've continued to move forward. And we continue to, I appreciate everybody for today's lesson. I think if you like this, I hope that you will join me for the next episode as I continue to go in depth with a number of these topics because there's so much to talk about. Who has problems? Everybody has problems. Who needs help? We all need help. Let me end with this final thought. I don't have a whole lot of hair anymore, but if I had a full head of hair and I was going to comb my hair. I would always do a much better job in front of a mirror rather than if I was not in front of a mirror. In the same way, a person that seeks out mental health services can do a much better job being honest with themselves if they're in front of a mirror, i.e., in front of an individual, in front of a professional, than if they're just trying to do it on their own, as it is more this day and age culturally appropriate. Everybody picking themselves up by their own bootstraps. So, the idea of working with somebody, you will always do a better job than if you don't. One of the mottos that we have in our clinic is, can anybody go to the Olympics without a coach? Impossible. We all need coaches. And a lot of us, no matter how much coaching I'll get, I'll never end up in the Olympics. But any professional sports team would never dare get on a field without their coach. How is it that so many of us are trying to live life without coaching? We all need coaching. One day I'll talk to you about the, I don't know, 12, 13, 14 coaches that I've had. Since the age of 17, I have never had a year where I went without coaching. In fact, everything that I have accomplished in my life, I owe to all the wonderful coaches that have walked with me and have helped me make decisions that have allowed me to build on my past steps. And so coaching is incredibly important. And I encourage you all to continue to find that. So if you liked today's program, please like, click, subscribe, and we have plenty of links below so that you continue to access some of our other work or some of the other topics that we think are very important here with you today. Thank you. My name is Dr. Martinez.